So lately, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm wondering if other people have had this on their heart too. Maybe they struggle with it themselves, because I'm just trying to come to an understanding. But that is how oftentimes forgiveness is framed in a way that makes the innocent feel guilty or they weaponize it. And first, I'm going to start off with a scenario. So let's say your mother or a father, you have a son. Your son plays soccer, and the coach's name is Coach Mark. Now, you all attend the same church together, right? You see Coach Mark every single time you go to church. One day, your son comes up to you and they confide in you that Coach Mark has been touching them and has been touching them for a while. And they go into detail. And now, once you have all the information, you are upset. You don't know what to do. You are struggling. You're wrestling with this information because you're just like, I don't know what to do. But the first instinct you have is to go speak to the pastor of that church. So you go to the pastor, you tell him that you want to talk to him about something. He sets aside some time. You come in his office. Then you tell him everything your son told you. And then you tell him how you are struggling with forgiving this coach because of what he did. Right? And when the pastor listens to your story and he absorbs everything, his response to you is, you shouldn't be wrestling with the spirit of forgiveness. You got to forgive that man. That is a good man. He made a mistake. Now, you see, what you don't know about that pastor is that in his spare time, he touches little boys. And this is how the cycle perpetuates. Because not in every scenario does something like this happen. However, in the church, you better believe it happens often. And the people around them know it and they're complicit. They either suspect it or they know something. Right? So what that pastor just did is project onto her guilt and why she should forgive that man, because he knows his own demons. He knows his own secrets. And he sees Mark as an extension of him. That is a good man. Therefore, he is a good man. You see how this happens? And then the other people who know what's going on in the church as well also project that, because they might know and suspect that of the pastor or other people in the church, but they want to shield those people. Right? See, there's this thing where there's so much sympathy and grace extended to predators and people who do harm, but there's this burden of responsibility for innocent and people who have been victimized. And another thing that I cannot stand is this idea that you can pretty much be a decent human being for the majority of your life, right? You make mistakes because it's a human thing, but then you get to the end of your life and you decide, I don't want to forgive somebody for something. And then you will hear people say, oh, well, that's not going to be good. You're not going to make it to heaven. Or it's some talk around like your spirit won't evolve if you don't. Yet somebody can kill somebody every single day of their life. A Jeffrey Dahmer, right? An Epstein, a Trump, a Diddy. And then by the end of their days, they can just ask for forgiveness and all of a sudden make it into the gates of heaven. That does not make any sense. Right? And so this is how forgiveness is framed and weaponized. And this is why people struggle with it. And I'll give you another example how this works in the power structures, because people who are predators, they seek out power. They're in every profession you can think of. Not every person in those professions, but you better believe they occupy those professions. Police officers, judges, lawyers, doctors, pastors, firefighters, military, politicians, teachers, mentors. They're everywhere. And they're all around your kids. Right? But because we have learned to grow up, a lot of people, not everybody, but what was the first thing a lot of people were taught when they were kids? To trust these people in these positions of power, to the point where you're so blind and enamored by somebody's position because you automatically associate that person in that position with trust, that you cannot see that they're predators. And then there's no consequence for them. There's no accountability. And then other people have to walk around with this burden on them. And I personally don't believe that if you choose not to forgive, your soul won't expand. This is my theory. I think that your soul expands when you learn to tell the truth about things. And sometimes that truth might look like, I'm not forgiving this person. I might need more time to forgive this person. I'm on the fence about it. I think that if we frame it as a process, as an option, as an invitation of progress, instead of as a mandate and an obligation, that is pushed and peddled with guilt, that people might be more open and inclined to do it. I think that a lot of people wrestle with forgiveness because it's not simply the act of forgiveness, but it's that the guilt that can feel behind it, but people pushing it to them when they're not ready or they don't want to. And that is dishonest to our spirit. There are people, I guarantee you, alive and dead, who have said they've forgiven and they did not. All because they assumed that that will make them look better, feel better, or what have you. Some people really do move in that. And some people have a harder time for that. But there's less grace and sympathy extended for people who don't move that way or who choose not to forgive than it is for people who are predatory. And they are cruel. And a lot of times it's often framed as like, oh, they grew up, they had a hard life, they've been through so many things. So what? So have so many other people, and they don't move like that and they don't cause harm. Now what? We don't often hear people say, maybe they did that on purpose. It was malicious and intentional. And in some cases it is. But y'all don't want to see that. You don't want to acknowledge that because you're too busy protecting predators and not the people who deserve protection in the first place. And so this is what makes forgiveness hard. And I'm not even saying that there's not a place for forgiveness, because I do believe there is a place. Personally, I prefer not to use the word forgiveness because I do believe in letting things go, not holding grudges, moving on with your life so that other people don't have power over your life. But I believe that reframe for me is what helps me move forward. Because from a religious context, in the power structures, all of these people who are telling you a lot of times, not in every case, but a lot of times are connected to the predator or they are a predator. And they know it. And then they tell you you should forgive. And this is the problem that I have with this framework. This is the problem that I have with this way of thinking and being. And then we push this onto youth, onto children, onto women, onto men too. And everyone's just like, yeah, I got to forgive so I can go to heaven. I got to forgive so I can expand my soul. No, you got to be honest. That's how I see it. I'm very clear about that. And I also find that what I'm talking about regarding forgiveness, it's the same when it comes to extending grace and not being judgmental. I'm going to talk about that on another video, but I see that same thing. This is how it's weaponized over time. So if you're a person right now and you are struggling with forgiveness, just know it's a process and it takes time. One, you don't have to do it. And two, if you do choose to do it, take your time. There's no rush to forgive. And I personally do not think that is going to cause any harm to you, because there are people out here consciously, daily making decisions to call ill intent and malice on other people for the sake of causing harm. And I do not believe that those people are going to share the same space with me when I leave here, no matter how much they ask for forgiveness. I don't see it that way. So I hope you find some comfort in this video, maybe some insight, because I'm just talking this out with maybe other people who struggle with this too, because something's got to give. This is so odd. And what really got the wheels turning for me was this quote by Adam Smith. And the quote says, "Mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent." Yeah. So I hope that helps.